Hey there, the great thing about the iFootage Shark Slider Nano 2 is that it's super easy to use without needing an app to control it. That's because you've got the built-in screen and you can perform loads of functions just using that built-in screen. But if you want some extra options, then you can use the app to give you a bit more creative control. In this video, I'm going to show you the two main ways to work with video using that app, but there's loads of other things you can do in the app, like time lapses. First thing you're going to need to do is install the app to control the slider. The app that you need to use is the iFootage Moco app. When you open up this app, you need to choose which device you want to control. We're going to select Shark Slider Nano 2, and then it's going to scan for devices, and you can see that the Shark Nano 2 has showed up here. You'll also need to use this app to update the firmware, and if you see a notification that a firmware update is available, you can just go and tap on that and then update the firmware on the slider. Tap next, and then you need to choose between whether you want to use a camera or you can use a smartphone. And as you can see on the screen here, there's limited options when you use a smartphone compared to a full camera. I'm going to tap use camera, and then it's going to open up the main screen. So the first of the two main ways to shoot video using this app is to use this app to set your keyframes, and this is very similar to what you would do using the screen on the slider. At the minute on the slider, you can see at the top we've got this little padlock symbol, and that tells us that the slider is currently locked, so we can't move it manually by hand. So you can either use the two buttons to unlock it, or you can tap manual marking at the bottom of the app and just confirm that warning box. And on the screen now, this padlock has turned yellow, which means it's unlocked, and that means that we can manually move the slider around, and we can go and choose where the first keyframe position is. This is going to be our starting position. And then on the app, I can tap A on the screen, and that's going to lock in key point or waypoint A. And on the screen, you can see that it's also mirrored that. Still unlocked, that means we can move it. So I'm going to move the slider down to this end, and I'm going to twist the bottom of the pan head. So I'm not using the ball head, I'm actually twisting the pan axis on the slider. And then I'm going to tap B on the app, and that's going to lock in keyframe 2 or keyframe B. And if I slide across here, you can see we've got keyframes all the way up to H if you wanted to program in a really complicated movement. Oh, and by the way, another quick tip, if you're using this slider in a production environment and you don't want that screen to show up or to annoy anybody, on the top of the app here, we've got the LCD button. If I just tap that and watch what happens on the screen, you can see that the LCD goes completely dark now. It's basically turned off, and that's just a little tip if you don't want to annoy people. So that's how you can set up your keyframes with the app using manual control, but you can actually control the slider remotely from the app. To do that, I'm going to tap manual marking. That's going to make this padlock turn locked and white, which means we can't move this by hand now. But once I've turned that off, we can get access to these slider controls. So I can hold down this and slide left and right, and we can also control the pan. If you find these controls are too sensitive in the app, tap these little sliders in the middle, and you can control the sensitivity for these two on-screen controls and also choose what they control. At the minute, we can only control the sliding and the panning because we don't have a gimbal attached to this thing. And I'm going to be doing a future video on how to use this thing with an RS gimbal from DJI, which unlocks so many more creative possibilities. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for that. I'm just going to leave these as the defaults. And let's just go and set up our ending shot again using these on-screen controls. Another advantage of using these on-screen controls is that you might be filming yourself and you might want to be able to control this slider when you're sitting away from the camera. So you can hit record on the camera and then control this slider once you're in the shot, just so you can make sure you've got your framing right. So we've got our two keyframes, and I'm going to tap standby. And that's going to move the slider back to keyframe A, which is the starting position. And if you want to, you can turn on loop mode. You can tell it to loop once or loop infinitely. And that's one of the extra things that you can do in the app that you can't do on the on-screen keyboard. On the on-screen keyboard, you can set up loop mode, but notice we don't have the option of once or infinite, it's just infinite. So now the slider is in the starting position, we can just tap start, but alternatively, we can also customize the keyframes. I'm going to tap on keyframe B, and then on the left-hand side, we've got these options. You can specify how quickly it's going to move from the previous keyframe to this keyframe in a time. So we could say 10 seconds, or you can tap on speed and enter a speed percentage. Let's just go back to time and we'll set this to 10 seconds. So it's going to take 10 seconds to move from point A to point B, and you can see the total filming time is also 10 seconds. I'm also going to tap on stay time, and we can choose how long it's going to stay at that position or that keyframe. If I change this to 5 seconds, tap away, now the filming time has increased to 15 seconds because you've got 10-second move, 5-second staying in position B. If you want to, you can also tap delay and choose whether you want an initial starting delay before the movement. For example, you might want that just to hit record on the camera and do other things and get in the shot. Tap standby again to go back to the keyframe A, the initial starting position, and tap start. Obviously you want to press record on the camera before you do that. And now it's going to perform that keyframed movement like this. It's going to stop for 5 seconds at that endpoint, and then it's going to loop around. So because we've got it in infinite loop mode, we need to be able to stop this thing. To stop it, you can just tap end on the screen and tap confirm, and it will come to a stop. Okay, so that is option 1, and that's to use pre-programmed keyframes. The second option is to use object or subject tracking with this slider. To do that, we're going to need to mount a phone on top of the camera, because the app can actually perform the tracking using the phone's camera and then control the slider from that. I'll just clear out these keyframes, and then we're going to go and fit the phone on the top. And it's quite nice because when you buy this slider, you get loads of stuff with it just to make it easy to get going, including this phone holder with a cold shoe adapter. I'm going to show you one way to use the tracking if you're tracking an object, and then I'm going to show you how to track a person after that. We're going to slide this in, and in this instance I'm going to be pointing the main camera of the phone towards the subject, which is going to be the drone. And then to start tracking, you can tap target tracking, and it's going to open up the screen. If I show you what's being filmed on this main camera, you can see that this drone is in the middle of the screen, but on the phone screen it's nowhere near the middle. So you might want to tilt this phone screen so it kind of matches what's on the camera screen. To start tracking an object, you can drag a box around it. And as soon as I did that, notice that the pan motor on the slider moved around, and now it's pointing at that thing. So you can either use it in this mode, where if you move the thing around, it's going to track it like that, just using the inbuilt pan axis. But you can also add one extra layer of movement and program the slider to move either a single move or loop mode. So I'm going to tap the cross to stop tracking. I'm going to tap cross to go back into this mode. We'll tap manual marking to unlock this. We'll set keyframe A there, we'll move it to here, set keyframe B, turn off manual marking, and then tap standby to go to that initial position. I'm going to tap target tracking, I'm going to drag a box around that, and then I'm going to tap this play button at the bottom right to start the movement. And as it's moving around, you can see that the camera on the phone is tracking the object, and it's sending that signal to the pan motor on the slider. That's all very well and good, but I've noticed that sometimes it's really not necessary to track a stationary object. You're better off using the first method where we program the manual keyframes in, because this drone is not moving. We don't really need to track it. But the second really cool use of tracking is to actually track a person or yourself or something else moving. To do that, we're going to need to flip this phone around into selfie mode. I'm going to tap manual marking to unlock the slider, because I want to turn this pan axis around, and we're going to turn this into a selfie filming situation. Unloosen this adapter, spin the phone around, and then lock it in. Let's just set up our keyframes. Turn off manual marking. I've got autofocus on the camera. And then I'm going to tap on standby to go back to the initial position, tap on target tracking, but I'm going to tap at the top right here to change the camera to this selfie mode. And as we did before, I need to try and roughly match up the framing in the camera screen and the phone screen. It's going to drag a box around my face, and now it's tracking it. And then I can tap play to play between those two keyframes. And now as I'm moving around, it's going to track me using the pan axis. So I can move here. Tracking's pretty good. You just got to be careful not to look at the phone screen, because the phone screen is not the actual image that's being recorded. So using this, you can move freely around, but the limitation of this is that you've only got the pan axis tracking you. So you don't have that tilt up and down, which you would get if you attached a gimbal to this. As far as I'm aware, you don't have the option to reframe this tracking like you do with something like Active Track in the Osmo Pocket 3. See if I can lose it. And as you can see, it's pretty good. And then just tap the bottom right to stop the movement. If you want to get the best out of this slider, then I highly recommend checking out this video next. And I've got loads more videos coming on this thing, so make sure you subscribe. I'm Jason Roberts, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye.